Have you ever been curious as to what the best Roblox FPS games really are? Or are you just curious as to what another person thinks of your favorite Roblox game? Well, look no further, because this is the ultimate Roblox FPS tier list. Before we start though, we need to actually find some games to put on this tier list. So I created some simple conditions to guide myself as I scroll through the massive amount of FPS games that exist on Roblox. The three main conditions I made were 1. The game must have a fairly consistent amount of players per day, with one exception for the video. 2. The game must have over 50 million total plays. And 3. The game must be fully multiplayer. You're not finding any story mode FPS games on this list here, unless you do want that. If so, let me know down in the comments below. With the guidelines set in place, I set off to find some games that would work perfectly for this list. Finding the first 4 were pretty simple since they're the ones that I've played and ones that I have known for years now. They're also some of the most popular ones on Roblox to date, and those are Phantom Forces, Arsenal, Counterblocks, and Rivals. Rivals has surprisingly climbed the ranks, reaching a whopping 1.2 billion plays since its release only 5 months ago of this year. If I had made a video like this a couple months ago, I probably wouldn't even know that this game existed. After doing some more searching, I finally have a full list of 12 total games to review and list on this custom tier list that I made, which I'll leave down in the description for you to try for yourself. Before we get started with the games, make sure to like and subscribe so you never miss another video. I decided I'm going to be going for the lesser played games and work towards the most played ones, and I'll be adding some additional factors as I rank each game on the list. Things like amount of content like weapons, maps, and characters. Graphics, while not a full factor, may play a part in certain scenarios depending on how well or how bad the other factors play out. Then there's the value to the player. How much does the game offer for a player taking their time and playing their game? Things like weapon progression, skin cases, earnable currency, and other things that the game may have added to keep the player engaged and give them a reason to play the game. With these conditions in place, let's get started with the first game. Our first game takes us to Recoil, developed by Bad Skeleton and released back in February of 2020. This game features a lot of stuff for the player and some really well-designed player models. After over 4 years of being on Roblox, the game amassed over 78.7 million visits and was last updated in October of 2023. Checking the player count, it seems fairly low with the total players in the game when I had played it at around the 30 to 40 mark. Not really off to a good start, but this one is really the only exception to the first condition when I was searching for the games, only for its modeling style. Launching into the game, we're greeted with a pretty simple loading screen with your loadouts, settings, characters, battle pass, and barracks. The loadouts allow you to use a very large array of weapons to fight your opponents, featuring quite a lot of attachments and skin for them as well. There are a pretty wide array of characters to choose from, each offering a different style. The barracks allows you to change things like your clan tag, call-out voice, view medals, bonuses, and more. Overall, the menu is pretty simple, yet offers quite a bit for each player, but now we get into the game itself. For each of these games, I'm only playing a little bit just to see how they run, how the game mainly looks, how the weapons are balanced, and get a final rating for each one. I may also have some levels in these games already, but most of them come from when I played the game so many years ago. Starting out with the first match, I already have a weapon kit from so many years ago, so I start out by using that, until I realized my sensitivity was way too high. Still managing to get a couple kills before changing it, however. Graphics wise, it looks really nice, the lighting and shadows are good, the texture quality is nice, and the weapons seem to operate pretty well. But this is where I ran into my first issue: the guns. In terms of balancing, the weapons feel extremely not balanced. It feels like snipers are the most broken thing in a game, and you can create a sniper kit that's just an insta-kill with the ADS speed being absolutely insane. Regardless, I was still doing pretty well, getting a couple kills here and there, dying and repeating. However, I ran into another issue with the character models. Turns out if you go prone with a sniper, your head just becomes invisible. This was apparent in a lot of my matches, and most of the times that I died were from somebody going prone and me not being able to see their head, or sometimes most of their body. Will this issue be fixed? Probably not, considering the last update to this game was just over a year ago. Another issue I found was that grenades sometimes got stopped by invisible walls, so if you try to throw a grenade over a hill or certain buildings, it won't go over it and it'll just knock back over to your side. The player count being as low as it did not help with my grading either. This meant that all of the matches were with the same people who were either just starting the game or level 80 and have been playing since release. However, it's not all negatives. The customization options for weapons, the amount of weapons, and the movement is all really good, but I wanted to see how fast it would be for a new player to level up a weapon when they first start the game. So I used a Scar with no levels and used it throughout the match to see how fast a new player / weapon could level up and how beginner friendly the weapons really are. And needless to say, it was not beginner friendly at all. The scope feels insanely small and hard to track an enemy when they're moving around. While this might not be the case for all the weapons, I feel like it could be an issue for new players trying to start it with nothing. The leveling, however, is really fast. I managed to reach level 9 by the end of the match, with the match only being 10 minutes and getting 25 kills by the end of it. Overall, with all the information that I gathered, I can confidently say this game is a fairly mid-B. It looks nice, it plays nice, the value to the player is good with the amount of customization and the amount of weapons. With the head glitches, unbalanced weapons, lack of players, and other issues that I encountered, that's where my rating will sit for now. Liking the video so far? Great! Make sure to like and subscribe so you can keep up to date on all my future videos. Our next game takes us to Weaponry, a game that was released back in 2019 and has maintained a consistent player count over its 5 years of being on the Roblox platform. With consistent updates and over 114 million total visits, I'm pretty hopeful for this one. Launching into the game, we're greeted with a menu that has quite a bit to offer. There's a lobby section where you can wait for the next match to start, weapons where you can view all the weapons available, to which there are quite a lot. There's a shop as well where you can purchase VIP and a couple other game passes. Other than that, it's just the basic FAQs, guides, settings, etc. Starting out, I'm not too confident in the server stability. My ping started at a whopping 3000 milliseconds and just went up and down from there. But I wanted to see if it was just a short thing, so I launched anyway, and needless to say, it didn't change. So I joined a different server to see if it would help, and for some reason every single US server just wouldn't work for me, giving me a completely random ping and making it almost unplayable. So I manually selected another random server, and it placed me in a server based in Germany. I genuinely don't know how, but I have better ping on a Germany server than I did in a US one. Make that make sense, because I can't. Now that I'm able to actually play the game, it's time to see what it's all about. My first match takes me to a construction site where we're playing a snipers only game mode with a sawed-off shotgun to gain height. My first issue arrived while I was playing this game mode, and that is the fact that my sensitivity is insanely high. Like, I can barely hit a shot high. Even after setting my DPI to the lowest, camera sensitivity to the lowest, and even the in-game sensitivity settings insanely low, it just felt too fast for me to be fully accurate. It wasn't long until I got some kills though, managing to get around 16 by the end of the match. My next match went far better though, ending up in Yacht with a standard TDM game mode. I decided it was better to get a good impression of as many weapons as possible, so every time I died I would swap to a different one. That was until I picked up probably the best weapon I had used so far. I ended up grabbing a VSS from an enemy, and I managed to destroy people with it since headshots at a long range hit for about 80 to 90 damage. I was able to sit on the rooftop and kill people with around 3 hits by just spamming the hell out of it. Once I died with that, I used a couple more weapons, each being pretty decent and having an average time to kill, with everyone having 200 health each. Once the match ended, I had a total of 30 kills and the MVP for the match. After going through and experiencing what the game has to offer, my final rating for this game sits at a pretty low C. The look of this game feels pretty standard, the weapon models look as you would expect, and the weapons themselves feel fairly balanced if you know how to use them. Unfortunately, the value to the player sits fairly low, since there's a surprising lack of unlocks and not even a leveling system. While it's not a huge factor, it certainly doesn't help a player want to stick around. The ping and server issues were probably the worst on my list, especially with the fact that the game had failed to put me in a proper server 3 times and gave me high ping no matter what I tried to do. Overall, it's a pretty standard FPS game that gives off a similar feeling to browser-based FPS games like Crunker. It just feels too basic, and I can list off many other good games off the top of my head. Only 11 more games to go. Make sure to stick around to the end to see the final results. The next game takes us to Noscope Arcade, an extremely fast-paced FPS game that's solely based around no-scoping your opponents using various snipers. Released back in 2021, the game has received numerous updates, with this most recent one being in October of this year. I have played this game before, so I'll try to play it with the mindset of a new player. Launching into the game, we're greeted with a store, inventory, tokens, weapons, and a nuke tab. The store allows you to purchase skins for your snipers and melee using earnable in-game currency. The inventory tab lets you change your skins for characters and weapons, your kill effects, and bullet tracers. The weapons tab allows you to select your preferred weapon of choice when playing for around 299 Robux, and the nuke tab just lets you pay 800 Robux to nuke everybody one time. There's a settings tab that lets you change quite a bit, from ragdoll effects, crosshair adjustments, graphic improvements, and some other settings. With that out of the way, it's time to try out the game itself. The movement allows you to slide around and sprint pretty quickly and keep a fair amount of accuracy. I managed to drop around 5 kills and win the first match. That wasn't until the game had to restart for an update and came back to a brand new look. There was a new leveling system that had some new tabs with some daily rewards and challenges, so I guess that makes the most recent update the day that I recorded this gameplay. Playing a couple more matches, I'm very impressed by the movement, weapons, and amount of stuff that's available now. After dropping multiple kills over many matches, I unlocked a new skin in about 5 minutes, which is really good to see. The weapons seem fairly balanced, and the hit registration is really smooth and isn't too difficult to get kills. The graphics are fairly simple, yet the weapon skins are really detailed. Overall, I have to give this game a very high A. The only reason why it's not an S is because there's only 6 weapons and the amount of maps seems fairly low. But the gameplay is really smooth, the hit registration is nice, and the customization and value to the player is very high, and it does allow for a good amount of grinding. While this game wasn't covered as much as the other ones, it's mainly because there isn't a lot to cover within the game anyways. It's 6 guns, some maps, and some really fun gameplay. The next game we'll be trying out has just a couple more million plays than the previous one, and that game is Big Paintball 2. Released in 2022, the game has amassed quite a lot of plays in just over 2 years of being on Roblox. With its initial success of Big Paintball Classic, this game has a pretty high average player count per day, ranging from 2,000 to 4,000 concurrent at most times, with its most recent update being in July of this year. Launching into the game, we're greeted with a screen that tells us to pick a weapon. I'm assuming it's a free weapon given to new players since I haven't played this game before, so I go ahead and grab the assault rifle. Turns out that there's only 3 weapons though, the minigun, the rifle, and the sniper. However, the game seems to make up for the lack of weapons with the insane amount of skins that are available through cases. So I launched into the first game and was getting stomped by somebody with over 170 kills when I first joined in. Noted that it was near the end of the round anyway, so it wasn't that big of an issue. I finished up that round in 3rd place somehow with 31 kills. Not horrible for my first match, but the second one is where it got kinda crazy. We end up in Nuketown, which is one of the many maps that are included with the game. I ended up getting 2 cases from the last match and opened them up to reveal some pretty basic skins. Starting out the second match with my new skin, I ended up getting quite a lot of kills in the first 30 seconds of starting, and it only got better from there. I get a turret, drone, and some recon, and just keep on getting tags since that's what the game considers as kills. Turns out you can just hold left click and jump around to get kills. Since all of the weapons are one shot, you can just spray around and hope a shot hits. It only took around 3 minutes before I ended up getting a nuke and just dropping it on everybody. In just under 3 minutes, I had over 80 tags, which is kinda crazy, and it just kept on climbing up from there. I got a ton of sentries, drones, and recon streaks, so even if I died, I could still have my turrets and have me and my team able to just spawn trap them constantly. After over half the match, I had already gotten a second nuke, and ended up finishing the match with a whopping 197 tags. Not a good look for me considering I've only played one match before that one. I think that was all I really needed to get a final rating for the game, and I can confidently say this one was another high A tier game. While the amount of weapons can be lacking, the sheer amount of weapons, skins, and crates that are in the game, matched with the awards given to each level up, gives the player a lot of value for their time. There's a good selection of maps, but there isn't a large amount of game modes. The graphics are nice and cartoony, and the game itself isn't meant to be a super tactical realistic shooter. It's just meant to be a really fun grindy arcade shooter, and it's going to be another game that's going to be on the low to mid A tier list. While I was going to add Big Paintball Classic to the list, both games run pretty similar with the added difference of weapon unlocking rather than skin unlocking, so while Big Paintball 2 only has 3 weapons, Big Paintball Classic has quite a lot more, with a similar amount of maps and game modes. There are also a couple more kill streaks that Big Paintball 2 does not have. Besides that, our next game takes us to Aim Blocks, a game released by Aim Labs back in 2021. The game has amassed over 284 million plays in its 3 years of being on Roblox, and is still being updated to this day. Launching into the game, we're greeted with a screen that tells us to select a free weapon. So I went ahead and selected the M4A1. The game immediately launches me into a match, so I speed through that one, get 3rd place, and finally check out the menu. The main menu includes quite a lot to explore. There's a loadout, shop, a ton of challenges and quests to complete, and tons of extra game modes below the shop like duels, arcade, aim training, competitive, and more. Turns out I already have some stuff left over from when I initially played the game when it came out. So I equipped an AK-103 and a PP Bison with some attachments to get a jump start. There's also the ability to change your melee, outfits, kill effects, and kill cards. Starting into the first match, I noticed that my recoil control with the AK is pretty garbage, especially at range. It's probably just a user error, but it felt like in order to be accurate, I had to tap fire with it at all times. The Bison, however, was much easier to control, and I found myself using it more often than the AK. In terms of graphics, the game is pretty detailed, with the weapon models being decent, and the maps being detailed in very specific parts. The overall graphics in terms of lighting, shadows, and other effects doesn't seem that prevalent in this game. In terms of maps, there seems to be quite a lot, and there's a sizable amount of game modes like the ones I listed earlier. Even with my initial difficulties with the weapons, I still managed to end up in 2nd place with 23 kills. After I was finished with that, I wanted to see if there was anything I could purchase, and needless to say, it was pretty low. Attachments are incredibly expensive, and a lot of them are locked behind level caps. A basic reflex scope costs 3k, and you barely get 1k for a single match ending in 2nd place. Good thing I started with 13k somehow, so I bought it and equipped it with my AK, and it ended up being just a little bit easier to track enemies. I don't know if anyone else experienced this, but I had somebody spinning around in my game. Not really shooting, just spinning and running around. But besides that, I was still managing to do pretty well on this next map. It's fairly close range with some launch pads to get from one side to another very quickly, and it didn't take long before I managed to get a 14 kill streak and end the match with 27 kills. Overall, I didn't find myself enjoying this game as much as I thought I would. While the weapon recoil is pretty accurate and they have set ones for each weapon, it just kind of feels like an aim trainer with some added unlockables and skins. Speaking of skins and unlockables, things are incredibly expensive. While weapons aren't as expensive, getting some simple attachments and other melee weapons can range from 3 to 25k for a single item. The rate at which you earn money is very slow as well. Within the first match alone, I only earned 200 coins, nowhere near the amount you need to unlock anything in the game. In terms of ratings, this one sits at a pretty mid-C. The game itself doesn't offer much to the player besides just running around and shooting people. While the leveling system might be pretty quick, the rate at which you can unlock weapons and attachments using money is insanely slow and does not make me want to continue playing it. There are a good amount of weapons and skins, but again, it takes far too long to start unlocking them before somebody can lose interest and move on to another game. We've yet to get an S tier game, however, but soon enough we'll be getting games with player counts in the billions, so stick around to see those. The next game on our list is Bad Business. Released back in 2019, this game has amassed over 504 million plays and has been consistently updated to this day. Loading into the game, we're greeted with a pretty in-depth menu. There's a loadout tab that lets you change your weapons and attachments, to which there are a ton. Same goes for the skins. There's an outfit tab where you can customize your character using items you can purchase from the store using earnable in-game currency. The shop has a ton of tabs ranging from weapon skins, player skins, weapons themselves, and quite a lot of game passes. There's a player tab to see your total stats, levels, and activate contracts, which is something I never noticed before. It's pretty hidden away, so you kinda have to look a little bit more to find it. I unlocked some attachments before going into my first match. Probably did it wrong because this weapon did not perform very well. Most likely was a user error, but the recoil was incredibly hard to control. And I noticed that there was a severe lack of players around my level since the last time I played this game would have been several years ago, so I had no idea what to expect. The first match didn't go too horribly though, definitely not the easiest to get used to, but I still managed to get some kills. The second match took us into a gun game, fairly easy to understand, and the weapons were pretty fun considering they had random attachments and they varied in skill quite a bit. Still didn't manage to win that one at all, but I still managed to get around 16 kills before the match ended. My last match went as you would expect. I tried using some different guns, but I had literally no match against the level 3 to 400 players I was going up against. Even if I had enough money to get more attachments, I don't think it would have helped in the slightest. Regardless of that, our team still won, and I managed to get around 14 kills overall. If you're a new player looking to get into this game, I don't think you'll have an easy time at all, especially since a lot of the consistent players are ones that have been playing since day one. In terms of stuff that's available, that's a completely different story. There's a ton of stuff to grind and unlock for, from contracts to weapons and attachments, skins to purchase, and more. There's a good amount of maps and game modes to play, so there isn't a lack of things to do. My only issues are the fact that trying to use a base gun against level 300s is damn near impossible, and the gunplay could be a little bit better. Overall, in terms of the sheer amount of stuff in the game, this game is just going to get a regular B in my book. There's a lot to do and unlock and game modes to play, but the gunplay just feels a little bit clunky and could be overall better in my opinion. The next game is one that is very simple, and feels a lot like Big Paintball, and this is Gunfight Arena. This game was released a little over a year ago and has amassed over 518 million plays since its release. The game serves as a simple deathmatch shooter where you eliminate enemies, earn credits, and unlock more weapons. But enough of that, it's time to get started with the game. Launching into the game, we're greeted with a screen to select and purchase a wide array of weapons. These range from primary weapons like snipers and ARs, secondaries like revolvers, shot-off shotguns, and regular pistols. Melee is just melee with some knives and bats to select from. There's a streaks and camo tab that allows you to purchase new streaks as you play and some camos to purchase and select as well. There's a new battle pass, which I never saw when I last played the game, with a free and paid section featuring weapons, skins, and more. Going into the first match, I had a pretty standard weapon, which I was able to get some kills with and was swapping weapons here and there, until I noticed a weapon in my inventory that had full attachments on it. So I obviously equipped it and was shredding people left and right. Unfortunately, I only finished in second, but the next match I ended up going into the Halloween event that was active during the time of recording, which was a fairly simple event consisting of a boss that people can either work together to defeat or go for kills on the enemies. Most of the footage that I was going to record was literally just this, for the entire match unless an enemy tried coming into our base. But I did record the ending bit to get a very underwhelming victory screen, to which there was none besides the regular game mode ed screen. Overall, this game is fairly simple to understand, there's a ton of stuff to unlock, it's easy to unlock stuff, the graphics are nice on the weapons and the maps, the movement is really good, and there's a decent amount of game modes. This game gets a fairly solid A. It's got enough stuff for the players to not get bored like Prestiges, and a lot of maps and game modes to choose from. Pretty small tier portion, but there wasn't much to cover in this game overall. The next game we'll be taking a look at is one that only has around 60 million more plays than the last one, and that game is Flag Wars. Released back in 2019, this game features a pretty small selection of weapons to unlock and no actual main menu. All of the menus are just in the same place when you start playing the game, so I just jumped into the game and I was quite disappointed by the lack of space in the maps. The entire goal is to mine out the lower part of a map and capture the flag. Same goes for the team deathmatch game mode. But once you mine out most of the map, it's literally just push aside, get a couple kills, try to capture a flag, run back and repeat. It's very lackluster, and I couldn't even play it for 10 minutes before calling it because it was just boring. There were some lag issues too, where I'd try to move around, but I'd get teleported around or die because I didn't realize I lagged in place and was being shot at. The simplicity could be good for some, and it's definitely a beginner-friendly game, but with more cosmetics to unlock than weapons, and the fact that the gameplay just feels so lackluster, this is getting a D on the list. I can see why it has over 500 million plays, just due to the simplicity and low difficulty, but it's just too simple for other FPS players to bother spending any time on. However, the next game we'll be playing is a very large player count jump from the previous one, going up nearly 500 million plays more than Flag Wars, and that game is Counterblox. Mentioned before in my video I made about Arsenal, this game was released by the same group as Arsenal, and that group is Rolve. Released all the way back in 2015, Counterblox, Arsenal, and one more game on this list are some of the oldest ones on Roblox that I will be looking at. They also coincidentally have the highest player counts besides Rivals, which will be ranked after. Going into the main menu, we're greeted with a couple selections for games like unranked competitive, deathmatch, and casual. There's a shop to purchase crates to get skins, inventory to select your skins, codes, and trading to trade skins with other players. Going into my first match, it was just me and 2 other players on the other team, so I was unfortunately stuck in a 1v2. While it wasn't that difficult to get kills with certain weapons, I found that some had horrible hit registration or just would be horrible for bullet spread. making very specific guns more easy to get kills with than others. The player count in my match being only 3 was a little upsetting considering there were around 600 players when I had played this match, so it was a bit confusing as to why there was nearly nobody on my server. My ping was about above average, which wasn't good, and the graphics have literally been unchanged since it came out in 2015. The MVP bars are the same, the leaderboard is the same, the maps are the same as they were nearly 10 years ago. There's skins, but is that really enough to bother playing? There's no ranked mode or level up system, just earning cash for kills and rounds played to buy crates. For a game as old as it is with a somewhat consistent player base, it's clear to see which game Rolf had actually taken care of in nearly 10 years. This is gonna have to be another D tier game for me. The lack of updates, poor weapon systems, poor graphics, and the fact that nothing has been changed since its release makes it incredibly disappointing considering that I used to play this game for a long time in the early years of its popularity. I can see why it got over 1 billion plays, but again, most of those were in the early years of the game. There are so many other FPS games that myself and many others have played that can mark them much better than Counterblocks. And honestly, you could just play CS2. I don't see a point to playing Counterblocks when I could just launch CS2 and play that one instead. The next game on the list is one that has skyrocketed in plays in such a short amount of time, and that game is Rivals. Rivals was released in May of this year and already has over 1.2 billion plays at the time that I recorded this. Rivals is a game where you can 1v1 players in a small map and go up to 5v5s with the goal of beating the other team with numerous weapons and many different maps to play on. Launching into the game, we're loaded into a main hub with an area to find a match, place to look at, and purchase new weapons, skins, and more. You can do all of this stuff with the bar seen below, but it's cool that you can walk into the places and view them that way. We start off with a base assault rifle, which I leveled up already since I played a slight amount of Rivals not too long ago. But I'm still able to play beginner 1v1, so I went ahead and tried that one out. I ended up being matched with a level 1 and they'd left a couple rounds in. My second match was with someone at the same level, but they were on mobile. So I don't think that's really fair and I ended up going 5-0 again. One thing to note is that the ending animation before the final scoreboard is really good. I enjoy the hype that the game gives you after your win, and I think it's a really good addition. I'm not 100% sure, but there might be the ability to purchase more end animations in the shop, but let me know in the comments if I'm correct or not. For my final match, I decided to go for a regular 1v1 to see if it would yield more different results, and I ended up going up against someone that was level 25. And I thought I was cooked since I was only level 10, but ended up going 5-0 against them as well. Going back into the main lobby, I forgot to check out the shops, where there's the ability to purchase crates for skins, purchase skins themselves, buy key packages, and certain packs with Robux. There's the ability to level up your weapons with the keys you earn in game to increase damage and improve other stats. There's quite a few maps that become accessible after you get out of beginner 1v1, which was nice to see. The movement is good with the ability to slide around and jump to gain some extra momentum as well. Overall, with the value to the player being very good, the graphics being fairly decent while keeping a basic style choice, and the fact that you can play with up to 5 of your friends and do 5v5s against other players gives this game a solid A. The only reason why it's not an S is because it's a bit stale if you play for a long period of time, since it's just 1v1 to 5v5 matches. But with everything else, it still gets a fairly high score. This was another short game portion, but that's only because there isn't a lot of gameplay I could get out of this game to really talk about. Now we're getting into the final 2 games reaching more than 1 billion plays, with the final game being the most played out of them all. Phantom Forces is the next game on this list. Released all the way back in 2015, Phantom Forces has grown and improved over nearly 10 years by a ton, featuring just under 200 weapons from primary to melee. The game also features over 800 skins inside numerous cases with different tiers. Now that's a lot of grinding. Each weapon allows you to unlock attachments per weapon, and there are a lot of weapons and attachments to unlock and create your own custom gun. But enough of that, it's time to get into the game. Launching into the game, we're greeted with a menu featuring a lot of tabs like loadouts, shops, and more. The shop allows you to purchase skins and weapon kits / bundles using both earnable currency and Robux. Loadouts lets you choose from 4 different classes, each featuring their own weapon sets both close and long range. Since I've played this game before, I have some kits already accessible to me, like this Intervention and this AK-12 kit I crafted so many years ago. Going into the crate section, I have some crates available to open, so I opened them all and unfortunately didn't get anything of value. So with that out of the way, it's time to join my first match. I decided to use my Model 700 kit that I had crafted with Noscope for some god-awful reason. I did have a deagle on the side, however, which was crafted pretty well. Putting the weapons in this game again took a bit of time, especially with the way I had made my Model 700, but it didn't take long before I started getting some kills. I found myself getting kills far more often with the deagle rather than the sniper, since I was able to get headshots fairly easily. After playing that match for a little while longer, the game decided I was too good for this lobby and promoted me. A very interesting game mechanic that you don't really see too often in Roblox FPS games. I guess once you reach a certain KD ratio or the game just notices that you're playing well, it places you in higher ranked lobbies with those of a similar skill level. I do enjoy that mechanic because it's great for new players to be matched with those of a similar level without worrying about a level 300 running around destroying the whole lobby. But it wasn't always like this. For a while after its release, I found myself against people with super high levels destroying me left and right. So it's really refreshing to see how much has changed in that sense. After getting transported to a new lobby, I decided to try another kit that I had made using the AS Val, since I would have at least hoped that it's better than a lot of the other weapons. Indeed, this kit was a little bit better, being able to get some kills here and there in this higher skilled lobby. I did end up keeping my deagle from the other kits relatively the same, so I still had a fallback if I wasn't able to do damage with the other. There's the ability to slide as you run, giving you some extra movement options when fighting your opponents. Overall, this game has changed quite a bit in terms of the weapons and skins available. The maps seem relatively similar, but there's also over 30 large and small maps to play with 16 different game modes to boot. Overall, this is going to be an S tier game for me. There's so much stuff to grind for and things to unlock. There's skins to gamble for with crates, an insane amount of large and small maps, and a ton of different game modes to keep the game less repetitive. If you aren't feeling one gun, you can just swap to another one and see if you like it. With nearly 200 weapons, you're bound to find something you enjoy. The game is really beginner friendly since it places you in lobbies around your skill level and will bounce you around if it needs to adjust you higher or lower. For one of the oldest working FPS games on Roblox, it certainly has a place in my heart as well as many others, and the constant updates and changes, it's what's keeping it at a consistent player base with new players every day after nearly 10 years. Now, the final game on this list, the one that you've been waiting for this entire video, and that game is Arsenal. Date-wise, it's nearing 10 years just like Phantom Forces, but Arsenal has over 5.6 billion plays, nearly 3 times more than Phantom Forces in the same period of time. I won't go into the full history of the game, but I do have a full video on Arsenal's history on the card appearing right now. Released all the way back in 2015 like Phantom Forces and Counterblocks, this game has been changed and updated a ton over the 10 years of its history, featuring a ton of new game modes, weapons, skins, shops, and more. The shops tab allows you to purchase character skins and other items that rotate every day. There's crates to purchase that offer different melee weapons, kill animations, effects, skins, and more for earnable currency. The loadout tab lets you equip all of these new things that you can unlock, and the game also features a pretty in-depth settings tab with tons of different things that you can adjust. Going into a match, I wasn't too confident in my ability since at the time I hadn't played the game in quite a long time, but it didn't take long before I started shredding the lobbies I was in, using weapon after weapon and getting some pretty sick multi-kills as well. It was cool being able to come back after so long and get within the top 3 fairly consistently throughout the numerous matches that I had played. There's a ton of maps ranging from close range with a ton of buildings to more wide open maps with a severe lack of cover in buildings. Then there's some that are right in the middle and feel perfect. There's a good amount of game modes like the classic competitive ones, Clown Infection and Brick Battle. There's a single weapon type game modes like Pistols Only, Automatics, and Projectile Party. Then there's the hard modes which feature the more difficult to use weapons, which add an extra challenge to the mix. I spent around 40 minutes playing match after match because it was just so addictive to keep playing, especially with the insane amount of maps and game modes available to play. There's even more maps and stuff available in private matches that aren't available to regular public games. All in all, this game is really good and is very beginner friendly due to its cartoony style and easy to learn weapons. While some aren't as easy as others, it's definitely a lot easier to learn these weapons than some of the other games mentioned on the list. Overall, this game is probably going to get an S tier as well. There's so much stuff to do, and while the gameplay can seem repetitive over time, I accidentally found myself playing for way longer than I should have for this video, where I'm not using an insane amount of footage overall. There's a ton of weapons to learn and master, skins to unlock, and crates to gamble for. There's a ton of maps and game modes to keep you busy and change things up consistently, and it's a super easy game to pick up, whether you are coming back to FPS games after a while or haven't played them before. And that's the final list. This was an incredibly long project of getting the footage for over 12 games, scripting them out, and giving them a final rating, but we finally reached the end. Huge thanks to you for sticking around to the end, and if you have reached the end, comment something with smoothie included so I know you finished the video. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe so you never miss another video I post. Huge thanks to my newest members and Majume for being a tier 3 member. If you want to be on this credit list, consider becoming a member by hitting the join button below. It's a great way to help me out and you get some pretty neat perks at the same time. Also make sure to join the Discord to connect with myself and other members of the community. Huge thanks to you for sticking around. I have been Miko and I'll catch you in the next video.